Hi everyone, Noriko back again. And guess what? We have Jean-Noël Escande back again because our conversations were so interesting and we couldn't cover everything that we wanted to cover in our last LinkedIn Live. And then after we got off the LinkedIn Live, we continued talking. And then I said, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Why are we talking offline when we could be having this conversation online and to be able to share it with others? So Jean-Noël is back. Jean-Noël, would you like to introduce yourself again to the LinkedIn Live audience?
Yes, for sure. Thanks for having me. And I'm basically a web developer with a strong background in data analytics. And I'm starting to research AI visibility like over a year ago. And I already have helped like 15 brands so far to gain visibility, understand AI search optimization, going from auditing, fixing their website, establishing content strategy that make them win visibility in AI search. And I'm really happy to have the follow-up conversation with you because indeed we open so many doors and there is so many ongoing conversation and debate between the SEO, the GEO community. So yeah, I'm happy to continue to elaborate on the previous subject for sure.
Well, so we were on LinkedIn Live like 2 weeks ago, and things moved so quickly. And the chatter on a lot of different platforms is about Google's announcement related to SEO. And they really are doubling down on the fact that, good SEO leads to good GEO. And so it's really about pulling people back to the conversation around SEO. So my first question is GEO authority actually real? Or are we just renaming traditional SEO authority for the AI era?
Yes, so yeah, authority is something I look into after seeing very complex analysis coming from an SEO and GEO practitioner named Dan Petrovic. And I found his methodology really interesting, and it helped me question like the debate we had in introduction. Like, is there overlap between SEO and GEO? Is it two different separate channels, separate category? And I think there is a subject about authority, but just before diving into authority or visibility, I'd like to expand a little bit on the news from Google. And I think this overlapping debate between SEO and GEO came from the fact that an LLM will partially use the index of a search engine, but only partially. I think there is other aspect to authority or visibility at play when we speak about GEO. So I think it's pretty natural that Google made that publication, but I stay on what we discussed last time. GEO requires specific measurements and specific tactics. Uh, I guess it will be a subject of another call, but now I'd like to speak a little bit about your question, like about authority. Is there authority, and which concept from SEO can we take on and continue with GEO? So one of the first one is definitely the question of visibility. And here for the visibility, it's different. The visibility in the SEO reality will come from your organic traffic, click-through rate, and your position and ranking in search engine. That's one thing, and that's SEO. That's how you track your visibility or ranking in SEO. When we speak about visibility in GEO, it's completely different KPI, different measurement. You need to see your, I'm just suggesting, like your mention rate, your share of voice within the LLM generated response. So, first of all, like the concept of visibility, it's different. Now, when we speak about authority in the SEO reality, authority is built essentially by your backlink profile and your domain rating. So the backlink profile is how much link on the web point towards your website, but how does it gonna work, or is it work in GEO? And what Dan Petrovic established or tried to measure, and I think his methodology is really interesting because it could be applied to different sector, different industry, and I think the brand really like to have this approach. And so, what is authority in geo reality? And I think in geo, the authority is one layer above. Part of your authority in geo will come from the training data, what the model know in his brain about you. So the fancy way of putting it, I think some of the people calling it like entity recognition, and I think it's about your authority before even the web search, before the localization process, and before the personalization process of the response. So I think authority in geo will partially come from your SEO status, and will partially come from what the model you are questioning will know about you before anything. So that's my take on authority.
Well, I'm going to sort of jump a little bit here, but how do you become part of training data then? So, one of the things that we really do want to discuss, and we'll get deeper into this, is about emerging brands. They are really wanting to appear in LLMs and AI search, but what is the likelihood that they'll be part of the training data?
The the likelihood will be really, 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 really small, because I think there is a misconception with the training data. Actually, to train an LLM, a good professional, I think, based on the research and the question I asked to engineer and machine learning people, like the amount of data that you need to train an LLM is actually quite small, or not as big as we could imagine. So you don't need the entire web to train an LLM, but you need the best material you can find. Which what would be the best material that should be or would be a part of a training data will be highly dense, informational, conversational text that will be great for training an LLM. Therefore, and so therefore, the website of a small brand have zero to none chance of being part of the training data. But that doesn't mean that they cannot work their visibility using this concept of authority.
Okay, let's jump into that later on.
Mhm.
So, when we think about AI visibility and when we type in questions that I call category questions, like what is the best consultancy for something, right? For taxes, or best consultancy for lead generation. Um, the large brands naturally dominate AI visibility. So, what are the structural disadvantages that appear for any brands in AI search? Is there something that is biased and pointing towards large brands here?
Yes, yes. What the kind of prompt that you are mentioning are the very high intent, ranking, and transactional. What is the best solution for my problem? And so, on that matter, yes, the bigger corporation have an enormous advantage. They have a bigger web footprint. They are there for way longer time. So the corporate size translate in the geo, no, not in geo, like in the LLM brain. It translate, it weight something. So yeah, of course, whether you try to address this authority question, the trying to build an authority index or trying to build entity recognition around your brand, if you do some prompts to ask an LLM what he knows about Nike or Coca-Cola, it will be disproportional compared to a small brand or very recent brand. So yeah, bigger comparison have an advantage, and also because they have better SEO. So on both way, they win. They win on the search engine, and they win also in terms of authority and weight in the memory on the brain of an LLM.
Okay. All right. So I am going to be hopping around quite a bit here. So if there is an emerging brand with limited budget, then if the larger brands really dominate from an SEO and GEO perspective, what would you provide in terms of recommendations so that they do appear? Like, a company that's a startup that's only been around for 2 to 3 years, what should they be thinking about?
Yes, I think there is a strategy that will require a little bit of willing of experiment for those small brands, but I think we could call it like authority by association. So when I run authority index research on the French luxury market, through this data analysis, I found out that when I was questioning the model about what he knows about French luxury, I saw there was some leaks in different category. In the first ranking that came out, I noticed that some brand were definitely not high fashion, but some were premium. Of course, they were at the bottom of the ranking, but they were there at the end of the analysis, which means that somehow the model associated them with luxury. And so by continuing and refining the data analysis, I found out some by mapping a graph of those relationship between the brand, I found some interesting link. And one of the main example for those who know the French luxury market or the French fashion, they will know what I'm talking about. I I identify within the brain of Gemini like a link, an existing link between two brands. One is luxury, one is premium. It's Chloe and Isabelle Marant. Those two brands are kind of having the same positioning in terms of style. They are producing the same kind of uh, vibe, the same kind of clothes, but they never had an official collaboration. So then I went on Google and tried to research how the model could connect those brands and why this premium brand was featured in a ranking, luxury ranking. And I found out countless social media posts made by random user, and it was those user were making the link between the two brands. I count so many Instagram posts joining the two brands, and it was simply not even influencer. It was really random, small influencer putting the two brand in the title of their post. For instance, I found countless posts like today I try a shirt from this brand with a bag from that other brand, and that it's only an hypothesis, but that's what I call like authority by association. And to translate it in simple term, like having online your name mentioned right next to the name of a bigger brand will definitely benefit the smaller brand. And on the opposite, for the bigger brand, there is a risk to be associated, to be diluted, to be like their specificity and their quality to be diluted. So it's really interesting. It will be worth for me to try it on different industry, but I think it open strategic perspective for small brand to try some smart social media content that will change from what they used to do, but that could win big, I think.
That's so interesting. If you think about it, the user generated content is really starting to have an impact. And a lot of people are following users. You could call them influencers, or you could just call them, just people who are posting about their lifestyle, right? And
Exactly.
if they're the ones who are linking them, but the brands themselves don't want to link them, right? So if you look at the official brand campaigns, it's very pure and very specific to that brand. But what users are doing is completely different. So it's going to be very interesting to see which one is going to lead to GEO authority and what are some of the different campaigns you can create. And so that takes me to,
And technically, just before you jump into the question, that's what Swatch and Audemars Piguet just did with their collaboration. But they just did it deliberately by creating a line of watch that have the Boast brand name on it.
mm,
And I think the same thing could be built, but this time by the user base without the brand even realizing it. Or
mm,
a brand could decide to hack a little bit this system by asking an influencer to deliberately mention their brand with a bigger brand. If you see what I mean, like to make the post that they require from their influencer to be still like 90% around their brand, but just with the mention to make sure that a bigger brand is mentioned. So it's a little bit of a hack, it's a little bit of a trick, but I think that's about authority by association.
very interesting. And I love the idea of applying that to other industries to see how that could work. I mean, with fashion, everyone's always mixing and matching articles of clothing. I'd, really love to see what would happen in other industries. Like, I don't know how that could happen in auto or, you know, insurance, or, some of the very more traditional B2B sort of areas. And maybe it's more B2C where there's a mixture of, products that you use all at the same time.
Exactly, I agree. Yeah, it seems more easy for the fashion. Like if I run an authority index about the car industry in Europe, it might be a little bit harder. But what I said, SEO people would say, "Oh, it's nothing new. We were doing like a comparison article for a long time." But I think it's a little bit more than just a comparison article, because now it's not about from coming from your blog. It can come from everywhere for anybody and in so many different social media platform, and those media platform have different weight because the different model tend to rely more or less on different platform to inform the answer. So some will say it's just a reshuffle of the comparison article, which in SEO was all about capturing traffic from your competitor by mixing their name and your name into the same article. So it's kind of the same essence, but let's see.
So, do you think co-mentions and influencer collaborations could become the new backlink of GEO?
Potentially, yes, and especially for a small brand. I think the bigger corporation, I think they will have to protect their brand and continue to do what they do because they have the critical size. But for the emerging brand, that's definitely, I think, a good option, good opportunity to rethink how they um, communicate about their brand and what they ask to a marketer and media company to say about them and the way they want those companies to talk about them.
Right. So, people are going to ask a lot of questions about GEO and what matters for visibility. So, how about a company's own blog content versus like third party mention? Which do you think is more important and what should they be doing first?
I think they are both really important. About third-party mention, LLM literally have what we can call a third-party bias. They have been programmed. The LLM have been programmed to have the third-party bias. So when a user ask a question about a brand, for instance, the LLM is programmed to go look what third party are saying about this brand before giving an answer. So it's a key element, and a brand should absolutely focus, of course, on their own content, and in parallel run a strategic third party mention, yes, strategy, and deeply think where they want to be mentioned, how much do they need to be mentioned by a third party. But both are really really important for LLM.
Mhm. Okay. All right. So I want to be really very practical and actionable now. So, um, a lot of the companies that are in the AI space are all new, right? Because many of them launched after the start of the Gen AI revolution, which was in 2022. So for many of them, their entire corporate life would have been like 2 to 3 years, and some of them have already become unicorns, which are great, but there are many that are not. So what should these emerging brands do, and what should they measure first, and in order to understand whether AI systems recognize or recommend them, and then what is the roadmap that you would recommend for their visibility?
I think of even a very small brand. Let's talk about like not a solo entrepreneur, but almost like a very very small, very limited resource company. I think with a minimum of agility and tech skill, I think they could get started pretty fast into getting a sense of where they stand on in terms of visibility in LLM. I will recommend them to think about their visibility in AI with a three-layered approach. So it's very simple. First, to try to gather a directional signal that they will find in their Google stack, their Bing webmaster tool, or in Microsoft Clarity. Try to see if there is already a referral coming from AI system. Directional signal. Then, if they found those little pieces of traffic coming from ChatGPT or other, then they can go and into the second layer. At this stage, if they have the directional signal, I will recommend them to start measuring your their AI visibility by any means, either themselves or either with a tool that will track their AI visibility. So it's technically just about establishing a battery of prompt, transactional, very high intent prompt for their category, and they can have also, like, if they're doing do it themselves, I will say like about 20 to 40 prompts on a topic will already give them a strong understanding in terms of sources, and if they are, if even if they appear, but with very very transactional high intent prompt. If they do like informational prompt, if they are a small brand, the most chance there is that the LLM won't even trigger an LLM search, a web search, sorry. Or they can do it by, there is so many tools nowadays that do those synthetic prompt tracking to inform you about your AI visibility, how many times you were mentioned, what is your share of voice, and all the KPI we already discussed. So that's the one that require either a little bit of work or a subscription to any kind of existing tool. And finally, the last layer, I will say to them to also look at the server log activity. If they are interesting, they can install like something like Cloudflare on top of their website. Found And that's really interesting because it will avoid them to fly blind, which means that if they if they start to take some content strategic approach, they publish, it's the server log that will tell them which content was the best, which content was most that which content gathered the most interest by the AI bot. So a three-layered approach seems like a lot. It seems really fancy, but with a spreadsheet, a little bit of Claude, they can really start.
Mm. I want to focus on the middle part,
Mhm.
partly because our company is focused on that middle part. And I think it's sort of, I think that's, you have to be really creative about the prompts. Um, so
It's
when
the
you
critical part of the
yeah,
measurement.
right. So you said, did you say like 20 to 40 prompts that you want, you should try and investigate? Is that what you said in terms of the number?
Yeah, but I said like by topic. So then it depends everything that we put into a topic.
Mm,
So, but I think let's say one brand, let's say one product. They do soap
mm,
and they only resell in one city or they have a small website. Yeah, for one product line, one business unit, 20 to 40 prompts about that specific product,
mm,
and then you multiply by the number of product, the number of business unit do you have, by the number of product line or
mm,
service do you offer. For a service provider, for instance, I will say, yeah, you should try between 20 and 40 prompt within the one service line. And then of course you can break down, you can cut by country, by persona, by target audience. Yeah, you can get pretty you can complexify and refine this approach of refinement. But yeah, for a small brand, um, they should do, instead of aiming for quantity of prompts, they should make sure that they design those prompts like very efficiently, with all the proxy that they can gather, information about their persona, their target audience, the search volume that they can get from SEO tool and everything, then build those prompts. And instead of having too many prompts, maybe they should run those 20 to 40 prompts one time, do some change, take some action, and rerun the same battery next month or during the next quarter. Yes.
mm. We have been incorporating the fan out analysis into our tool. How would, to what extent would you recommend fan out analysis for the prompts?
I'm really haven't a very strong opinion about fan out. It's something that I've been quite distant with. Um, I know it's important. I know there exists. It's part of the mechanics behind LLM. At this stage, I don't get the necessity. I don't think overthinking the query fan out for a small company should be the focus. If we keep talking about small company, solo entrepreneur that want to have their SEO and their GEO fixed, because essentially a query fan out is basically a paraphrase of the initial query. So it's kind of really important if you want to refine and get a very, very deep understanding and deep view. Um, but language is not a problem for an LLM. So, it's about like synonyms and paraphrase. So having an idea and understanding that query fan out is one of the first mechanism that an LLM triggers to search the web is really important. It tells you a lot about the word, the semantics related to your subject. So for very deep analysis, a very deep understanding of your like a business or your area is a must-have. But for a small company, I will tell them to think about query fan out a little bit later in the when they are inquiring about the the geo funnel, uh, step by step. You're on mute.
We're at the end of the 30 minutes again, and I think we can go on forever. But
Yes, we could.
so, if there's one thing that you'd like the audience to walk away with about GEO authority, about GEO, what would that one sentence be?
I will tell them like, do not discard SEO. I will recommend them to be quite conservative actually. Fix your SEO first. And if you want to dig into GEO, first clean the health, ensure you have a clean, optimized website. So start looking into your SEO. Keep it simple, keep it basic, your core web vitals, the signal that you get from the Google stack. And then to jump into GEO by understanding like the measurement, the KPI, those question of visibility, those question of prompt battery, user intent, and to experiment. So SEO, GEO, and a little bit of experiment and curiosity into the subject, I think can make some small brand make have a bigger impact and generate revenue ultimately. So I think every solo entrepreneur they want one thing is generate more revenue. Do not underestimate even if you're a small brand. Do not underestimate the traffic and the revenue you could get by being recommended by AI, because the people trust AI. People have a really weird relationship with the AI system, not the same relationship that they have with a search bar. So when you get recommended by AI, uh, basically when you do conversation analysis, you see people asking for opinion, uh, deep question about their life. So being recommended by AI is just like being recommended by the best friend, most trusted person of your customer. So go for it, but step by step, and be very simple and pragmatic about it. Think about it, and then deploy something simple, but something well rounded and well thinking. That will be my take. Start with the SEO, then go into GEO, and the proper way, in the proper sequence.
Fantastic. Jean-Noël Escande, thank you so much for this conversation. And if you ever want to get in touch with them, I will share his LinkedIn contact as part of this LinkedIn live presentation. And we'll see everyone soon.